Okay, so cloud foundations, crown jewels. It's a term that was bandied around in the UK quite a lot, and it referred to all the bits of infrastructure or services that you wanted to retain within your trusted perimeter. Irrespective of where you were on the cloud path and your cloud ambitions, there's always going to be infrastructure and services that you maintain. Right? At its simplest level, you will have inner and outer firewalls, for example, almost certainly, network switching. You may consider things like data leakage and secure brokering that I'll talk about separately, but these are things that you have to maintain. And the reason why I put that up is it's often overlooked. You'll probably remember as part of the invitation, we talked about a cloud readiness assessment that's available for everybody in this room. And when we look at the crown jewels, we look at the suitability and the effectiveness of the infrastructure and services that you have to retain and you will expect to work and work well in order to achieve your cloud goals. It is often overlooked. We see it all the time. What you use today to access the internet may not be appropriate for your forward plans. You may have risks. You may have single points of failure. There may be key disciplines that you haven't thought about. So these are the crown jewels. Even a business that moves entirely to the cloud will always have something that they depend on to get there, and that's the point. The trusted perimeter versus encryption debate. Wow, okay, so if you've ever worked for a bank or an investment bank, and this was probably more a problem 10 years ago, you're a shiny-faced guy who looks 12, who rocks up and says, how about cloud, right? I can remember having arguments with our friends in risk, and they said, Naran, if it's not within our four walls, if it's not within the trusted perimeter, we can't trust it. We have to be able to audit our data centres. We need to see things. We need to have our hands on this stuff to trust it. It's not safe. If anything leaves our data centres, we're at risk. Don't you understand this? Right. Okay. So how do we solve that problem? So encryption is a good one, certificate services. Being able to logically extend the trusted perimeter with encryption. SHA 256 keys, for example, encrypting data at rest, and in transit, allows you to logically and safely extend your walls, your trusted perimeter. And that's how we overcame that. That's how banks, the banks that I work with certainly, were able to become more comfortable with cloud. And it was interesting. It was an exchange online debate, so it was a software as a service argument. It took about 9 months to convince the business to do it, 9 months before anybody landed hands on tools. And it was the encryption at rest argument that got that over the line. And I can safely say now, being still in contact with those guys, they've moved on, right? Having knocked down that barrier, that comfort level, they're now looking at things like application hosting, desktop hosting in the cloud, and all sorts of things that just would have never have been possible had they have not dipped their toe in the water. Data leakage and secure brokering. So John P. talked about shadow IT. The worst example I've seen of this to date is a large global telco that I used to do work with, developed a global strategy for them, working with operations. And one of the reasons why I was there was they got burnt badly. So they had shadow IT every way you could look. Huge company, departments going out and consuming cloud when they wanted to, right? They had problems that they needed to solve, and they were out there buying cloud however they wanted to. And they became exposed when data started to leak the business and it made it to the press. I remember when I used to work for News Corporation, who said, Naran, your only measure of success, or failure, probably more specifically, is if you make the press. If something you're working on makes the press, you're in big trouble. And that was a media company, right? So we are, in fact, that particular media company was already in the press. That's a different story. But data leakage is a huge issue if you're not across it. And data can leak any which way. Email, thumb drives, web, It's something that you may not have necessarily really thought of, and maybe not to its full extent. But it is a foundation service, and it's something you need to understand. And secure brokering, this particular global telco solved their problem by delivering a service, by owning the cloud journey. So they delivered a brokering service where they said, right, businesses or business units, if you want to consume cloud, you absolutely can, but please do it via this portal. Please do it via these processes. That's the way they got what's part of the way where they got their hands on preventing shadow IT, and hybrid identity was another way. And threat defence. So from February next year, the notifiable data breach scheme will kick in. In its simplest form, what that means is if you have a data breach, if you're under the behest of the Data Protection Act, and if you have a data breach, you'll be obligated to tell your customer, you'll be obligated to tell the government legally, and you'll have an obligation to show that you understood what happened. So you might argue, if the data breach happened in the first place, you may not have any tooling or services or capability whatsoever to demonstrate that you have an understanding of what happened. It's certainly going to be more difficult. And imagine the embarrassment of having to shape up to your customer and say, oh, by the way, we've just lost a bunch of your data, but you're cool with that, right? Because we're still delivering rapid provisioning and automation and all that good stuff. I mean, it'd be really embarrassing. So this is going to kick in next year, and unsurprisingly, it's one of the reasons why it is a core focus for us. It was around the outside of our hero diagram. It's something that we have to do well and has to be an unconscious competency for our business. But the one that's most exciting, the one that's the easiest to implement and delivers the most value or bang for buck is hybrid identity. I like this for lots of reasons. I like this in the benefits it delivers end users, obvious benefits. I like this as a defence for shadow IT. And I like that allows, certainly from our perspective, allows us to guide our customers on their cloud journey in a consistent way. So how does it work? Fundamentally, it's about user provisioning and around single sign-on. So you're a business, you consume probably multiple cloud services, but you want to be able to consume those as if they're local apps. You don't want to have a separate login and password, separate password change cycles, etc. Separate password complexities, that's the worst one, isn't it, to try and remember across all the different apps that you consume. You want it to be consistent. You want to log in once in the morning. And when you want to consume your cloud services, you want them to just work. We take this for granted in our business, right? We obviously use all of this stuff, but we're not signing into Skype for Business. We're not signing in each day to our Outlook. We're not signing into NetSuite or any of the other cloud services that we use. We just use them because they're there. We don't have to remember anything other than the username and password that we log in with and the complexity associated with that. And for our administrators, when they create new users, they want to create them once. They don't want to have to go into each and every cloud service and create a single identity for each new starter in our business. And additionally, I mean, if you think, what's the most common service desk ticket? Password resets. It still is. So having a password self-service capability that satisfies every consumable app and service in your business is a huge productivity saving. It's a huge saving to your business. It's a huge relief to us. We manage a national service desk, right? This is a big deal for us, and we see it. We can see the material difference that this makes for the customers that are on this journey with us, have implemented hybrid identity. It just becomes something that they forget about. It's something in the past. And two-factor authentication or multi-factor authentication. So I guess could be seen as an unknown risk unless you're presented with it. You have somebody in the business who, with one login, can access 5, 6 cloud services from finance, HR systems, CRM platforms, Salesforce, etc., from one login. Right? That's great from a usability perspective, but if you need to, let's say, terminate access quickly for whatever reason, or if you have an internal threat or something to that respect, you need additional layers of security. And it might be conditional multi-factor authentication as well. So you might say that if you're in our buildings, or the trusted perimeter, again, that everything's fine and you won't need multi-factor. But if you step outside of that, if you're on the road, we may request that you do have multi-factor authentication. And hybrid identity gives you that capability. And the cloud marketplace is huge. These are little screenshots taken from the Azure Cloud Marketplace, and there are thousands of businesses that Microsoft have integrated the hybrid identity platform with. So this isn't just a Microsoft story. I mean, you look at some of those names. There's some of the biggest SaaS providers in the business, and they all tie in with Azure Active Directory. Once you've created that presence into Azure AD, implemented hybrid identity, it's probably a 1-2 hour task to federate with these cloud services. It's really, really simple. But this is how it looks, right? I mean, this is the Azure portal. This is us integrating NetSuite, which is our finance and HR platform for our business. And when we do that, all the features that become available to us that we can turn on, this is how it looks. As an end user, you can go to your My Apps portal that will show you each and every app that's published to you as a user. You can see NetSuite. It's clearly not a Microsoft app, published there. And equally, you get this lovely tailored URL. You launch that URL, you will single sign-on. You can publish that URL via a shortcut in the start menu as favourites or whatever you want, and it's more secure because the whole authentication handshaking process and mechanism is handed over to your identity infrastructure and services. So that's compelling. Ripe are a key partner for us. They're our cloud service provider. Ripe do lots of wonderful things for us, and we're really grateful to have them here. What we love about Ripe, one of many things we love about Ripe, is how they complement the hybrid identity story. They've developed a fantastic service offering called the Prime Portal, something that we administer on behalf of our customers, and it allows us to establish and modify and dial up and dial down subscriptions to cloud services in seconds and make them available immediately. And the best example I had of this was a key customer of ours in Victoria, and we were mid-meeting. We were there talking about other things, talking about roadmap, and our key buyer said to us, I need to provision a new subscription. Can you do it? And I said, well, I did it live. I did it there in front of him, right? A completely new subscription. It was on and working within half an hour. He was using it within half an hour, fully authenticated. All the apps were available and published within half an hour. And his project was off and running. So it's very, very powerful, linking the ability to provision subscriptions and change them on the fly as linked to hybrid identity.